Hello, everybody. This is Parker Hurley. We are on to the fifth of 32 NFL teams that I'm doing for this offseason preview, where I wrote offseason questions after the NFL draft. So I'm going to answer what happened to my questions throughout the regular season, and then we'll come up with some questions throughout their offseason that we'll see if each team answered them by the end of the NFL draft. So we're on to the New York Giants here. My first question was, could the Giants entering 2025 be the best defensive line in football? The answer turned out to be no. I talked about how Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, and Brian Burns could be a real nice trio. Dexter Lawrence coming off of an all-pro season, and then has a couple interior defensive linemen next to him, like Roy Robertson Harris, Nunez Roches, and then they drafted Darius Alexander. I said it could be a really deep and talented group. Thibodeau got hurt halfway through the season. He was having a good season, but he was pretty good through the first half. Then he got hurt. Abdul Carter took a few weeks to get going as a rookie, kind of finished strong. So they never really had all three of them at their peaks or looking their best. Dexter Lawrence was not nearly as good this season as he was last year, which is a huge disappointment and probably the biggest issue, especially because their run defense cratered this season. And that's some of the issue, that their pass rush was a lot more disappointing because they were playing from behind much more often. But Dexter Lawrence still had a rough season. Nunez Roches got hurt. Darius Alexander was banged up and was arguably a letdown as well. And then Roy Robertson Harris kind of just was what he was. So, I mean, only Brian Burns lived up to or met expectations. Everyone else, I mean, Carter maybe by the end of the season met his expectations, but everybody else you could say was a little bit under their expectations. So that's where I just ended up not being correct, that this defensive line was not as deep and talented as it may have looked back in May. I said, could the cornerbacks be what holds the defense back? I said, that great defensive line. They have a couple talented linebackers. They just signed a big name safety. Is it going to be, Adebo? Paulson Adebo's coming off of an injury. Banks has been a bust as a first-round pick, and Cordell Flott hasn't secured himself as a starting outside cornerback. Both Paulson Adebo and Cordell Flott missed time, but by the end of the season and throughout the majority of the season, both of them were starting, and Flott especially, I think, had a pretty good season. Really, I think, answered my question of, can he be that outside starter next to Adebo? And I think he answered it with a yes. Can Adebo, like I said, Adebo missed some time, wasn't quite as good, but I don't think he's necessarily an issue, like the issue that I thought maybe cornerback would be. They're going to have a question with Cordell Flott. That's going to come up in my offseason questions. But for the most part, I think the defensive line was worse than I thought, and the cornerbacks were better than I thought they were going to be. My third question was, what's going to happen at quarterback? I said, I think Russell Wilson is going to start the season. I said the first time anything bad happens, Jackson Dart is going to play. And I was pretty much right about that. I think it was, week 3 when they ended up bringing in Jackson Dart for week 4. So his season was up and down. I think everyone knows the biggest issue, or everyone, if you're watching this, you probably know, I've seen Jackson Dart enough to know his biggest issue is protecting himself as a runner, because when he becomes a dual threat option, that's obviously when he's at his best, but he's also taking himself out of games due to some of these injuries. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses next season. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this as maybe one of the best jobs, because the quarterback isn't 100% locked up, but you at least have some confidence in what you've seen from Dart as a rookie. So that's at least exciting for Giants fans. How will the running back situation shake out? I said, it looks like Singletary is going to kind of get phased out by the end of the season. I said that Tyrone Tracy and Scadaboo could be a kind of thunder lightning sort of dynamic. The truth is that I think when Cam Scadaboo was healthy, he was really starting to take a grasp of the running back room, almost over Tracy and phasing Tracy out as well. So he's had an offseason injury. His playing style sets up for injuries, so it's hard to completely bet on him for next season. But a lot of the optimism around the Giants is that Dart's going to come back with a better head coach. Scadaboo is going to be healthy. Neighbors is going to be healthy. We have the 5th overall pick, all those sort of things. So he's a huge part of their excitement for next season. And then Tyrone Tracy, he couldn't completely separate from Devin Singletary. He isn't a 3-down type of back, but he has enough passing game impact, and he every once in a while he just hits that 40, 50-yard run. He's got that speed to kind of overshoot the fact that he's a little inconsistent. So it works for him, but I don't think he'll ever be a 3-down runner. But as a complement to a guy like Scadaboo moving forward, I think that could be a really dynamic bunch. My final question was, is Marcus Bowe going to start at right guard by the end of the season? I said he was a tackle in the college football, but I also mentioned that his projection looks towards the interior. And when you look at the Giants' offensive line, Greg Van Roten in there, free agent this season, the hope would have been that Bowe would have started at right guard and they would feel good about moving Van Roten on. A lot of it had to do with Andrew Thomas's injuries, Jermaine Illuminor's injuries. They've had to play him at both tackle spots. And then some of it maybe just his development or that Van Roten has been better than him. So the answer is no. Bowe actually has had no right guard experience, and it actually sets up for one of the biggest questions for the New York Giants heading into this season. So looking at their position by position, like we said, Jackson Dart is going to be the quarterback. They're going to let Russell Wilson go. Jameis Winston should probably just stick around as the backup. I don't see no reason why the Giants would want to get rid of him there. They could extend Tyrone Tracy at some point, but I think they're going to just roll with the three of hope Scadaboo gets healthy, knows that Tracy is a home run hitter next to him, and then they're just going to keep Singletary because Tracy isn't a complete back and Scadaboo's been injured. One of my biggest questions is, what do they do at wide receiver? It's almost clear that, when overall they need to upgrade the wide receiver room, one of the biggest things is that they're going to get Malik Neighbors back. And then with Malik Neighbors out, Wan'Dale Robinson actually had 1,000 yards receiving. Now there's going to be a new coaching staff, and Wan'Dale Robinson's going to be a free agent this offseason. So do they even bring back Wan'Dale Robinson? The front office may want to, and the front office is intact. So the issue, though, is if you bring back Wan'Dale Robinson, you're starting to pay him like $10, $15 million because of what he just did. You're paying Darius Slayton $16 million, and you can try and trade him, but you can't cut him. He has too much dead salary cap. So if they extend Wan'Dale Robinson and they have Slayton for the salary that he does, and they're bringing back Malik Neighbors, are they really going to upgrade the room? And if they don't upgrade the room, is that really going to be enough? Slayton, the past 2 years since he's gotten his deal, hasn't been quite as good. Robinson is still limited. They're both fine players, but when you put them together as the completion of the wide receiver core, maybe it's not enough. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do there. Tight end, I have pretty much set. They'll add some depth, but Theo Johnson obviously took a big step this season, and I think they'll roll with him. They need a blocker to complement him. Offensive line will be really interesting. Left tackle, they have Andrew Thomas. Center, they have John Michael Schmitz, but Schmitz's contract is going to be up here, and I don't know if they're going to be interested in extending him. They had Austin Schlottman as a very valuable backup center. Do they add somebody who can step in and potentially start if JMS misses time? Or do they say these are arguably our two spots that are kind of set right now, and JMS is still young. He could be a little bit better, and maybe the coaching staff that comes in still likes him. So and then John Runyon is due $11 million. They can move on from him, but I don't think that they are going to want to unless they pay a big name wide receiver and they're stuck paying Darius Slayton $16 million to be their number 4. They're trying to save every penny. They could move on from Runyon, but I don't think they're going to. So I think Andrew Thomas, John Runyon, and JMS stick at those three. But right guard, who knows, because Van Roten is a free agent. He's aging. You would have liked to see Bowe there, but he hasn't done anything there. So do they trust Bowe playing a completely new position? Do they draft somebody? Do they sign a free agent? And then Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. Another one, does Bowe slide out to right tackle and he gets a season to try things out right there? Do they draft something to upgrade in that spot, or do they stick with Illuminor, who did miss some time, who's solid, but obviously could be upgraded from? So it's going to be really interesting to see, especially, like I said, when you're when you put $16 million into Slayton, who's your third receiver potentially, you have to make these tough decisions when it comes to bringing back Illuminor or maybe even Runyon. So Kayvon Thibodeau, his contract is still pretty tradable. He only has 1 year left on his deal, so it's not as valuable as it used to be. But, I think if you're the Giants, you have to start to understand that he's more valuable because you're not going to re-sign him as Carter progresses. He needs to get on the field more, and you weren't able to get Carter on the field nearly enough for him to progress the way that you wanted him to when all three of them were healthy. So I understand it's great when you have all three of them in those like 10, 15% of snaps when all three of them get to play together. It's great, but you need to allocate your resources to better things. So if they can get a pick for Thibodeau and then put that into something else, it could obviously help them. So looking to their interior defensive line, I think for the most part they're going to run things back. Nunez Roches is a free agent, but he was banged up last season, so it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with him. You would assume that maybe they add one more piece and hope that Darius Alexander gets better next season. Micah McFadden's a free agent coming off of an injured season. So many new coaches. It's going to be interesting, but the front office obviously likes him. They understand that the injury derailed his chances, and they also understand that other teams aren't going to, have the same injury privy as the New York Giants. So I could see Micah McFadden getting extended. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Cordell Flott as well. He's a free agent, like I said, coming off of a good season, but only played 600 snaps. Has his first 3 seasons hasn't solidified himself as a starter, then has one big contract season. Do they just give him a 1-year deal? Does another team kind of steal him away from that? And then at safety, I think Javon Holland was just a mess. He just didn't work with this team. So you assume that they're going to trade him and try to recoup some of that salary cap. So that's going to lead into some of my biggest questions for the New York Giants moving forward here is basically, as I just ran through the roster, number one, who's going to fill in on the right side of the offensive line? Do they run it back with Van Roten and Illuminor, or who do they upgrade and how? Is it smart to just run it back with Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson, or do they really try to upgrade the wide receiver room? That'll be interesting to see. Are they going to extend Cordell Flott and trade Javon Holland, and are those the big moves in the secondary? Do they re-sign 2 free agents who seem re-signable in Micah McFadden and Jermaine Illuminor? I know it's new coaching staffs, but it still seems like if they want those 2 back, they could certainly get those 2 back. And then will the team trade Kayvon Thibodeau? Where to? Who to? What are they going to get back in return? Can they use that on, if they could trade Kayvon Thibodeau for a 3rd-round pick, use that 3rd-round pick on a starting right guard, isn't that so valuable to Jackson Dart and what he's going to do next season, to where, okay, maybe your defense takes a hit in terms of depth, but you add a serious starter at a position of need. So will be really interesting. They are one of the, most they're a team that you could obviously see, like I said, with a new coach, with they still have Burns coming off of a good season. They could get Lawrence playing better, Abdul Carter playing a little bit better. If everything just meshes, McFadden comes back and he's healthy, and then Dart, Scadaboo, Neighbors, with a better coach and everything, it could all fit together, and Giants could be one of those teams that really turns it around on the fly. Whereas like the Raiders and the Jets, you're looking at them saying they're going to take a whole nother season before they're quite back yet. So that'll be really interesting to see what they do, especially who the coach is, because you obviously would think the coach is going to be, a somewhat of a good name, because a lot of the bigger names out there are going to be interested in this job. So I'm Parker Hurley. Follow me at Parker Hurley. We'll be doing the number 6 team in the NFL draft tomorrow. So check us out there.